The year is 2333 before the Common Era. The dust swirls as 2000 Shang dynasty warriors lock shields against a charging horde. Bronze axes glint under the merciless sun while arrows darken the sky. In this moment, a general raises a banner not with brute force, but with cunning, deploying the first recorded feigned retreat in history. Fast forward to tonight, where satellite images show nearly identical troop movements along Ukraine's front lines. The shocking truth: every major conflict of our time, from corporate boardrooms to cyber warfare, is still being fought with playbooks written in blood and sand millennia ago. What if the key to outmaneuvering modern rivals lies not in new technology, but in decoding the forgotten stratagems of history's greatest commanders? Consider this: when Russian hackers fake system failures to lure NATO cyber teams into traps, they're executing the same bait and switch the Mongols perfected in the 13th century. Ancient Chinese scrolls detailing false troop counts now manifest as AI-generated phantom armies in digital battlegrounds. Even your smartphone's algorithms use Hannibal's flanking tactics to corner markets before competitors blink. This isn't just about swords and shields. It's about the 20 timeless strategies that built empires, now silently shaping our world. So what could Sun Tzu teach a 21st century general? More than you'd ever imagine, because whether it's a Silicon Valley startup or a superpower's special forces, victory still belongs to those who master the art of war's eternal principles. Stick around as we expose how these ancient blueprints for conquest are playing out in your life right now, often without you even realizing it. Now let's turn our attention to one of the oldest tricks in the book, the Feigned Retreat. Picture this: Mongol horsemen in the 13th century, masters of deception, suddenly breaking formation and galloping away as if in panic. To their enemies, it looked like victory was within reach. But this was all part of the trap. The pursuing forces, driven by overconfidence, would chase them straight into an ambush where fresh Mongol troops waited to strike. This wasn't just about physical positioning, it was psychological warfare, preying on the natural human impulse to press an advantage without questioning why it was given so easily. Fast forward to Ukraine in 2022. Russian forces appeared to crumble near Kharkiv, abandoning positions in what seemed like a disorganized retreat. But Ukrainian commanders, trained in military history, recognized the pattern. Instead of charging blindly forward, they advanced cautiously, probing for hidden reinforcements. Their restraint paid off. They avoided walking into a deadly trap while still reclaiming territory. This modern example shows how the same principles of deception and patience still dictate battlefield outcomes today. What makes the Feigned Retreat so effective isn't just the maneuver itself, but the arrogance it exploits. Ancient generals and modern strategists alike understand that nothing blinds an opponent like the belief they've already won. Whether it's a medieval army or a cyber warfare unit faking a system collapse, the goal remains the same: let your enemy's overconfidence become their downfall. And as we'll see next, this tactic has evolved in ways even Sun Tzu couldn't have imagined, shifting from dusty battlefields to the invisible front lines of digital warfare. But here's where things take a modern twist. The same Feigned Retreat strategy has found a new battlefield, one without horses or dust, just lines of code and blinking server lights. In the digital age, hackers have become the new cavalry, and their version of a false retreat involves faking system failures to lure opponents into a trap. Picture this: a cyber attack appears to crumble under defense, with firewalls seemingly holding and malware getting wiped out. The defending team, thinking they've won, might chase the retreating hackers, only to stumble straight into a carefully monitored kill zone. Recent reports from the National Security Agency reveal how Russian cyber units have perfected this tactic. They'll stage a mock retreat, letting their attack seem to falter, only to redirect their targets into a digital ambush. Once the defenders take the bait, thinking they're counterattacking, they expose their own systems to hidden malware or surveillance tools. It's the same psychological playbook the Mongols used, exploiting overconfidence, turning pursuit into vulnerability. What's fascinating is how little the core principle has changed, even as the tools have evolved. Whether it's a 13th century horseman leading enemies into an archer's range or a hacker tricking a security team into revealing their defenses, the lesson remains timeless. The easiest victories are often the ones you're meant to chase. And as we'll see next, this ancient tactic isn't just about deception. It's about reshaping the entire battlefield, whether physical or virtual, to suit your advantage. Now let's turn to another timeless strategy that has shaped empires and boardrooms alike: divide and conquer. Julius Caesar mastered this approach during his conquest of Gaul, where he skillfully exploited tribal rivalries, turning allies against each other until none could resist Rome's dominance. Fast forward 2,000 years, and you'll find the same playbook in the hands of modern corporations, especially tech giants reshaping entire industries. Take Amazon's rise to power as a prime example. Just as Caesar fragmented Gaul's tribes, Amazon systematically divided the retail market by undercutting competitors, absorbing smaller sellers into its marketplace, and then controlling the ecosystem itself. Sellers initially flocked to Amazon for its vast customer base, only to find themselves locked in a system where the company could dictate terms, fees, and even compete directly against them with its own products. The result, a marketplace where Amazon holds the power and rivals are left scrambling for scraps, a corporate echo of Caesar's Gaul. But the parallels don't stop there. Tech firms like Google and Facebook have used similar tactics, breaking markets into smaller, more manageable segments before dominating each one. Whether it's acquiring potential competitors or manipulating algorithms to favor their services, the goal remains unchanged: isolate, weaken, and control. The tools may be algorithms instead of legions, but the strategy is as old as Rome itself. What makes this approach so enduring is its brutal efficiency. By preventing unified resistance, whether from Gallic tribes or small businesses, those in power can pick off opponents one by one. And as we'll see next, this isn't just a corporate or military tactic. It's been a cornerstone of political warfare for centuries, with consequences that ripple across borders and generations. Now let's step into the shadowy world of political warfare, where the divide and conquer strategy takes on an even more calculated form. During the Cold War, intelligence agencies like the CIA didn't just observe communist blocs, they actively worked to fracture them from within. Declassified documents reveal how operatives identified ideological rifts between Soviet-aligned nations, then stoked those divisions to weaken the Eastern Bloc's unity. Take the Sino-Soviet split as a textbook example. By the late 1950s, cracks were already forming between Moscow and Beijing over leadership of the communist world. Western intelligence seized this opportunity, quietly amplifying disagreements through propaganda, backchannel diplomacy, and even covert support for factions favoring independence from Soviet control. The result, a bitter rivalry that drained resources and attention from the global Cold War front, mirroring exactly how Roman governors played neighboring tribes against each other to prevent unified rebellions. Archives show similar tactics in Eastern Europe, where CIA operatives cultivated relationships with reformist factions in Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Just as Rome rewarded cooperative local leaders with trade privileges, the U.S. offered economic incentives to satellite states pursuing autonomy. When Hungary's Imre Nagy or Czechoslovakia's Alexander Dubček pushed for reforms, they unwittingly became pawns in a larger strategy to destabilize Soviet hegemony. The brilliance and brutality of this approach lies in its subtlety. Unlike military campaigns, political warfare leaves no visible battle lines. Instead, it plants seeds of discord that adversaries water themselves, whether through purges, paranoid crackdowns, or costly interventions. And as we'll soon see, these same principles now fuel modern cyber campaigns, where digital whispers can splinter alliances as effectively as ancient betrayal or Cold War propaganda. Now let's turn our attention to one of the most devastating tactics in military history, the Scorched Earth strategy. Picture this: the mighty Persian Empire facing an invasion, deliberately burning their own crops and poisoning wells to deny resources to the advancing enemy. It was a brutal but effective way to cripple an opponent's supply lines, forcing them to either retreat or starve. Fast forward to today, and the same principle lives on, not with fire and destruction, but through economic warfare. Take Russia's 2022 grain blockade in the Black Sea as a modern example. By blocking Ukrainian ports and preventing millions of tons of wheat from reaching global markets, Moscow weaponized food supplies just as the Persians once burned fields. The goal: to destabilize nations dependent on Ukrainian grain, particularly in Africa and the Middle East, creating political pressure on Ukraine's allies to ease sanctions. The ripple effects were immediate: food prices soared, hunger crises deepened, and governments scrambled to secure alternatives. This tactic isn't just about starvation, it's about leverage. Ancient armies used scorched earth to exhaust invaders, while today's economic blockades aim to exhaust political will. Russia's move mirrored centuries-old logic. If you can't defeat your enemy on the battlefield, make their survival so costly that their supporters reconsider. And just like the Persians, modern aggressors know that desperation breeds compliance. But here's where the strategy takes a darker turn. Unlike ancient times, today's scorched earth doesn't just target soldiers, it punishes civilians, turning breadbaskets into bargaining chips. The next time you hear about sanctions or supply chain warfare, remember, it's not a new idea, it's an old one dressed in a suit and tie. And as we'll see next, this ancient tactic has found an even more destructive form in the digital age. Now, let's step into the digital battlefield, where ancient scorched earth tactics have evolved into something even more insidious. Imagine the Scythians, who lured the Persian king Darius I into their territory, only to burn everything behind them, leaving his army stranded and helpless. Today, that same strategy plays out not with fire, but with lines of malicious code. Ransomware attacks are the modern equivalent of scorched earth. Hackers don't just steal data, they destroy it. Take the Colonial Pipeline attack in 2021 as a chilling example. Cybercriminals didn't just lock the company's systems, they crippled the infrastructure, forcing a shutdown of a pipeline supplying nearly half the fuel to the U.S. East Coast. The result: panic buying, fuel shortages, and economic chaos. Just like the Scythians, the attackers left their target with no usable resources, turning desperation into leverage. Forensic analyses revealed something even more striking. The hackers didn't just want ransom money. They wanted to prove that critical systems could be held hostage, exposing vulnerabilities in a way that echoed ancient scorched earth campaigns. By targeting infrastructure, they didn't just harm one company, they sent a message to entire nations about the fragility of modern life. This isn't just about money or data. It's about power. The Scythians knew that destroying resources could break an invader's will, and today's cyber attackers understand the same principle. Whether it's pipelines, hospitals, or power grids, the goal remains unchanged: leave your enemy with nothing to fight with. And as we'll see next, this digital warfare is just one piece of a much larger puzzle in the art of deception. But deception in warfare didn't stop with burning resources. Sometimes, the most effective strategy is making your enemy believe you're stronger than you really are. Take the Carthaginians, who faced Rome's overwhelming forces during the Punic Wars. Outnumbered and outmatched, they lit rows of dummy campfires at night, creating the illusion of a massive army waiting just beyond the hills. When Roman scouts reported back, their commanders hesitated, buying Carthage precious time to regroup. This ancient bluff laid the foundation for what we now call the hollow force tactic, a way to project strength where none exists. Fast forward to World War II, and you'll find the same trick in play, just with better props. The Allies famously used inflatable tanks, fake airfields, and even wooden artillery to mislead German reconnaissance planes. Operation Quicksilver, part of the D-Day deception, deployed entire ghost armies made of rubber and canvas. From the air, these decoys looked like real armored divisions, convincing Hitler to hold back troops that could have crushed the Normandy landings. The lesson: sometimes the right illusion can be as powerful as actual firepower. Today, the hollow force has gone digital. Artificial intelligence now generates fake troop movements in satellite imagery, creating phantom battalions that shift enemy strategies. In recent conflicts, analysts have spotted entire military bases that vanish overnight, digital mirages designed to waste an opponent's time and resources. Just like Carthage's campfires, these deceptions exploit the same human weakness, the fear of the unknown. When you can't tell what's real, every decision becomes a gamble. And as we'll see next, this art of illusion stretches far beyond fake armies, into the very information we trust to make sense of the world. Now let's turn to how these ancient illusions have evolved in the digital age. China's three warfares doctrine takes deception to a whole new level, blending psychological operations, media manipulation, and legal pressure into a modern playbook. At its core lies the same principle Carthage and the Allies used, creating the illusion of strength, but with a 21st century twist. Instead of dummy campfires or inflatable tanks, today's battles are fought with fake social media accounts, AI-generated propaganda, and carefully orchestrated online mobs. This isn't just spam, it's a scaled-up version of an ancient Chinese stratagem called the empty fort strategy, where a commander would leave city gates wide open to convince enemies the defenses were too strong to attack. Today, that empty fort might be a flood of bot accounts overwhelming a hashtag or a fabricated viral narrative pushing a political agenda. During tensions in the South China Sea, researchers uncovered networks of thousands of coordinated accounts amplifying pro-China messages while drowning out dissent. The goal: to create the illusion of overwhelming public support, just like those phantom armies of old. What makes this so effective is how it exploits our modern reliance on numbers. When a post appears to have millions of likes or a trend seems universally accepted, we instinctively treat it as truth. Ancient generals understood this too. Sun Tzu wrote about making your forces appear where they are not to paralyze enemies with doubt. Now that same doubt is weaponized in comment sections and news feeds, and the stakes are higher than ever. When entire populations can be manipulated into believing fabricated realities, the line between perception and truth blurs. But as we'll see next, deception isn't the only ancient tactic that's found a terrifying new home in modern warfare. Now let's shift our focus to one of the most daring strategies in military history, the indirect approach. Picture this: 2,000 years ago, Hannibal stunned Rome by leading his army, complete with war elephants, across the treacherous Alps. This wasn't just a feat of endurance, it was a masterclass in psychological warfare. By appearing where the Romans least expected, Hannibal shattered their sense of security and forced them into defensive positions they never prepared for. Fast forward to modern times, and you'll find special forces still relying on this same principle of surprise. Take the raid that took down Osama bin Laden. Navy SEAL Team 6 didn't storm through the front gates of his compound in Abbottabad. Instead, they flew in under cover of darkness using stealth helicopters, avoiding radar detection and Pakistani defenses entirely. Just like Hannibal's Alpine crossing, their success hinged on redefining the approach, choosing a path so unexpected that the enemy couldn't possibly prepare for it. What makes the indirect approach so powerful is its ability to bypass an opponent's strengths entirely. Hannibal avoided Rome's superior infantry by taking to the mountains. The SEAL neutralized Pakistan's air defenses by flying low and silent. In both cases, the key was not brute force, but creative problem-solving, finding the route the enemy never thought to guard. This strategy isn't limited to physical battles either. Cyber warfare teams use similar tactics, slipping through digital backdoors instead of confronting firewalls head-on. The lesson is timeless. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest path to victory. And as we'll see next, this principle extends far beyond the battlefield, reshaping everything from economic competition to technological dominance. Now let's turn our attention to how this same principle of the indirect approach plays out in the world of economics. Just as ancient empires controlled key mountain passes to dominate trade routes, modern nations are waging battles over something far smaller but just as powerful: semiconductors. Picture the ancient Silk Road, where empires like Rome and Han China fought to control the flow of goods. Blocking a single mountain pass could cripple an enemy's economy. Today, that mountain pass is Taiwan, home to the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. This single company produces over half the world's advanced chips, making it the choke point of the digital age. When the United States imposed export controls on advanced semiconductors to China, it wasn't a direct military strike, it was economic flanking. By cutting off access to TSMC cutting-edge chips, they targeted China's ability to develop artificial intelligence, supercomputers, and advanced weapons. Just like Hannibal bypassing Rome's legions to strike at its supply lines, this move avoided a head-on confrontation while still delivering a devastating blow. The parallels go even deeper. In ancient times, controlling trade routes meant controlling wealth and power. Today, controlling semiconductor supply chains means controlling the future of technology. China's response, a massive push to build its own chip industry, mirroring how ancient states would carve out alternative routes when blockaded. What makes this modern economic warfare so effective is the same thing that made Hannibal's strategy work. It targets the enemy's weakest link, not their strongest defense. And just as mountain passes decided the fate of empires, the battle over semiconductors could decide which nation leads the next century. Up next, we'll explore another ancient tactic that's found new life in modern warfare: the art of siege. Now let's shift our focus to one of the oldest and most brutal forms of warfare: the siege. Picture the ancient city of Tyre, an island fortress so well defended that even Alexander the Great struggled to conquer it. His solution: building a massive causeway to turn the island into a peninsula, cutting off supplies and starving the defenders into submission. Fast forward to the 21st century, and you'll find the same principles at work in places like Mariupol, where Ukrainian forces held out against overwhelming odds, surrounded and cut off from reinforcements. Siege warfare has always been about patience and pressure. In medieval times, armies would encircle a city, burning crops and poisoning wells to starve the population. Today, the tactics have evolved, but the goal remains the same: break the enemy's will by targeting their essentials. Take Europe's energy crisis as an example. When Russia slashed natural gas supplies in 2022, it wasn't just about economics. It was a modern siege designed to freeze populations into submission and fracture political unity. Just like ancient armies blocking grain shipments, this was about controlling a vital resource to force surrender. The psychological toll of sieges hasn't changed either. Whether it's the citizens of Tyre watching Alexander's causeway creep closer or European households facing skyrocketing heating bills, the message is clear: hold out long enough and desperation will do the rest. What makes modern sieges so effective is their scalability. Ancient armies needed physical walls to trap their enemies. Today, a pipeline valve or a cyber attack on infrastructure can achieve the same result without a single soldier setting foot on the battlefield. But here's the twist: just as defenders in Tyre found ways to smuggle in supplies by sea, modern nations are adapting too. Europe turned to alternative energy sources, and Ukraine used underground tunnels to resupply Mariupol. The tools may change, but the game of endurance remains the same. Next, we'll see how this age-old strategy has entered the digital realm, where besiegers don't need walls, just lines of code. Now let's step into the digital battlefield, where ancient siege tactics have found a terrifying new home. Imagine an army surrounding a city, cutting off every entrance and exit. Except this time, the walls are firewalls and the attackers are floods of data. Distributed denial of service attacks, or DDoS for short, are the modern equivalent of surrounding your enemy with overwhelming force. Instead of soldiers, these sieges use thousands of hijacked devices to bombard a target with traffic until its digital defenses collapse under the strain. Take Ukraine's experience in 2022. Russian-linked hackers launched waves of DDoS attacks against government websites, banks, and energy grids, overwhelming them with up to 3 million requests per second. That's like an ancient army surrounding a city with 3 million soldiers, all pounding on the gates at once. The result, critical services went dark, just as a medieval city's wells might run dry under siege. What's chilling is how closely these digital casualty rates mirror historical ones. In ancient sieges, defenders often lost half their population to starvation or disease. During Ukraine's cyber sieges, some systems saw 50% downtime, a haunting parallel in the digital age. But here's where it gets even more strategic. Just as ancient besiegers would alternate between bombardment and quiet to wear down defenders, modern hackers use intermittent attacks to keep targets perpetually off balance. One day it's a flood of traffic, the next it's a deceptive lull, only to strike again when repairs begin. This psychological warfare is straight out of Sun Tzu's playbook, where he wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. In the digital realm, that means crippling infrastructure without a single physical breach. Yet, as always, defenders adapt. Ukraine's cyber units, backed by volunteer hackers worldwide, began redirecting malicious traffic into digital kill zones, mirroring how ancient cities would funnel attackers into prepared killing grounds. The tools may be lines of code instead of boiling oil, but the principle remains unchanged. Whether it's stone walls or servers, the essence of siege warfare endures. Control the choke points and you control the battle. Next, we'll uncover how another ancient deception tactic, the false flag, has evolved into one of today's most potent weapons of misinformation. Now let's pull back the curtain on one of history's most deceptive tactics, the false flag. Centuries ago, pirates would sail under the flags of friendly nations, luring unsuspecting ships into range before revealing their true colors. This same trick has evolved into a cornerstone of modern hybrid warfare, where disguising your identity can mean the difference between victory and defeat. Take Russia's 2014 Crimea operation as a textbook example. Masked soldiers in unmarked green uniforms, dubbed Little Green Men, seized key infrastructure while Moscow denied any involvement. These weren't pirates hoisting a false flag, but the same principle in camouflage. By creating plausible deniability, they turned annexation into a shadow play, leaving the world debating who was really pulling the strings. The Syrian civil war offers even darker evidence. Forensic investigations uncovered staged chemical attacks designed to frame opposition groups. One declassified report showed how government forces planted canisters at bomb sites, mirroring ancient tactics where armies would dress their own soldiers as enemies to justify retaliation. The goal: manipulate global perception by controlling the narrative before the truth could surface. What makes false flags so effective isn't just the deception, it's the chaos they create. When you can't tell friend from foe, hesitation becomes your enemy. Sun Tzu knew this well when he wrote that all warfare is based on deception. Today, that deception might unfold on social media instead of the high seas, but the game remains the same. Next, we'll see how this age-old trick has gone digital. with artificial intelligence now crafting fake events so convincing they can spark real-world conflicts. Now let's step into the digital age where false flags have traded wooden ships for lines of code. Artificial intelligence has given deception a terrifying upgrade, with algorithms now crafting fake news events so convincing they can ignite real-world conflicts. Imagine a fabricated video of a world leader declaring war, or a doctored audio clip of military orders that never existed. These aren't sci-fi scenarios. They're the modern equivalent of Byzantine emperors who invented barbarian invasions to rally their people. History shows us how rulers like Justinian I used phantom threats to justify crackdowns and consolidate power. Today, the same playbook runs on servers instead of scrolls. Deepfake technology can clone voices and faces with eerie precision, while generative artificial intelligence spins out entire fake news ecosystems in seconds. One notorious case involved AI-generated images of explosions near government buildings, shared widely to stoke panic and division. The goal: to manipulate public opinion by weaponizing doubt. What makes these algorithmic false flags so dangerous is their scale and speed. A single malicious actor can flood social media with thousands of tailored lies, each designed to provoke specific reactions. Researchers have documented cases where fake atrocity videos, created by adversarial governments, pushed neutral countries toward intervention. It's a digital hall of mirrors where truth becomes collateral damage, just like when ancient rulers burned their own villages to frame enemies. The Byzantine Empire fell centuries ago, but its tactics live on in the algorithms shaping our world. As we've seen, whether it's a pirate's flag or a deepfake, the oldest rule of warfare still holds: chaos is the ultimate weapon. Next, we'll uncover how ancient decoys evolved from wooden horses to inflatable tanks, and why deception remains the ultimate force multiplier. Turning now to the art of visual trickery, let's examine how ancient decoys have shape-shifted across millennia. The Assyrians were early masters of battlefield deception, using dummy soldiers and fake camps to mislead enemies. Fast forward to World War II, and you'll find this same tactic reborn with inflatable tanks and plywood artillery. British forces famously deployed hundreds of these counterfeit weapons during Operation Fortitude, convincing Nazi reconnaissance planes that the D-Day invasion would strike at Calais instead of Normandy. A 2,000-year-old stratagem updated with rubber and canvas, but the decoy game didn't stop with World War II. In recent years, Iran made headlines by constructing a full-scale mock-up of a United States aircraft carrier, complete with dummy fighter jets floating it in the Persian Gulf as both a training target and a psychological provocation. Satellite imagery analysts initially mistook it for the real thing, proving how even in the age of high-tech surveillance, the human eye remains vulnerable to well-crafted illusions. This wasn't just theater, it forced adversaries to waste resources verifying the threat, mirroring how Assyrian kings once tied up enemy scouts chasing phantom armies. What makes modern decoys so potent is their dual role. Like their ancient counterparts, they create uncertainty, but today they also exploit the limitations of technology. When every satellite photo requires interpretation, a convincing fake can trigger costly overreactions or mask real movements. The lesson: whether it's an Assyrian straw soldier or an Iranian fiberglass warship, the best decoys don't just fool the eyes, they hijack the decision-making process itself. Next, we'll see how this age-old playbook has migrated into the digital realm, where entire server farms now serve as 21st-century Trojan horses. Now let's step into the digital battlefield, where ancient decoy tactics have evolved into something even more deceptive. Cyber warfare has given rise to honeypot servers, the modern equivalent of sacrificial units luring enemies into traps. Picture this: a seemingly vulnerable database filled with fake intelligence, deliberately left exposed to attract hackers. Just as ancient armies used dummy fortifications to drain enemy resources, These digital decoys waste cybercriminals' time and energy while security teams track their every move. The National Security Agency has documented countless cases where honeypots diverted hackers from real targets, sometimes for months. One notorious example involved a fake power grid control system that Russian operatives spent weeks infiltrating, only to realize they'd been chasing digital ghosts. This mirrors how Assyrian commanders once stretched enemy scouts thin by sending them after phantom troop movements. The principle remains identical: exhaust your opponent's resources while gathering priceless intelligence. What makes cyber decoys uniquely dangerous is their scalability. A single honeypot can simultaneously bait thousands of hackers worldwide, something no physical decoy could achieve. And just like their ancient predecessors, these traps reveal enemy tactics. Every keystroke, every malware sample left behind in a fake system becomes a lesson in how attackers operate. So whether it's a wooden tank in World War II or a server farm disguised as a bank's database, the art of deception keeps rewriting itself across history. Next, we'll uncover how an even older trick, the Trojan Horse, has found terrifying new life in the age of malware. Now let's turn to one of history's most infamous deceptions, the Trojan Horse, but with a digital twist. Imagine a gift that appears harmless, even useful, only to unleash chaos once inside your walls. That's exactly what happened in 2010 when the Stuxnet worm slipped into Iran's nuclear facilities disguised as innocent software on a USB drive. Just like the Greeks hiding soldiers inside a wooden horse, this malware concealed its destructive payload behind layers of ordinary-looking code. The parallels are uncanny. Odysseus' crew relied on the Trojans' curiosity to bring the horse inside their city. Similarly, Stuxnet exploited human trust and engineer plugging in what seemed like a routine update. Once inside, the malware didn't just attack, it studied. It mapped Iran's uranium centrifuges, learning their rhythms before subtly altering their speeds to cause catastrophic failures. This wasn't a blunt force attack. It was sabotage disguised as technical glitches, mirroring how the Greek warriors waited until nightfall to strike. What makes Stuxnet a true descendant of the Trojan Horse is its layered deception. The malware even had fake digital certificates, like forged Greek insignias on the wooden horse, to convince systems it was legitimate. And just as the Trojans ignored warnings about the gift, Iranian technicians initially dismissed odd centrifuge behaviors as routine malfunctions. By the time they realized the truth, the damage was done. This ancient strategy thrives today because it preys on universal human traits: trust in gifts, reluctance to question the familiar. Whether it's a wooden statue hiding soldiers or a USB drive hiding code, the lesson remains: beware of unexpected gifts. Next, we'll see how this age-old trick has evolved into something even more personal: the art of social engineering. Now let's peel back another layer of deception, where ancient spies and modern hackers share the same playbook. Centuries ago, intelligence gatherers would blend into crowds as merchants or travelers, earning trust to extract secrets. Today's digital spies use eerily similar tactics, only their disguises come in the form of emails that look like they're from your boss or your bank. The Federal Bureau of Investigation reveals a staggering truth: 85% of all security breaches start with this simple trick. A message that feels familiar, urgent, or helpful tricks someone into clicking a link or sharing a password. It's no different from a Babylonian spy posing as a grain trader to slip past city gates. The tools have changed, but the target remains the same: human psychology. Take the infamous 2016 attack on the Democratic National Committee. Hackers didn't brute force their way in. They sent carefully crafted emails impersonating trusted colleagues, just like ancient saboteurs forging royal seals. Once inside, they moved silently, gathering information for months. This wasn't a failure of firewalls. It was a failure to question whether that password reset request was really from IT. What makes social engineering so enduring? It bypasses the strongest locks by exploiting the one vulnerability that never gets patched: our instinct to trust. Whether it's a fake merchant in 300 BC or a fake invoice in your inbox today, the lesson is clear. The most dangerous weapons aren't always swords or malware. Sometimes they're just convincing words. Up next, we'll examine how delaying tactics from ancient battlefields now shape modern economic warfare. Now let's turn to a strategy that proves sometimes the best way to win is to refuse to fight at all. The Fabian Strategy, named after the Roman general Quintus Fabius Maximus, was born during the Second Punic War when Rome faced Hannibal's seemingly unstoppable forces. Instead of meeting them head-on, Fabius chose to harass, delay, and exhaust his enemy, avoiding major battles while cutting off supply lines and launching small, relentless attacks. This war of attrition drained Hannibal's resources and morale, proving that patience could outmaneuver brute strength. Centuries later, this same principle became the backbone of modern guerrilla warfare. Take the Ho Chi Minh Trail during the Vietnam War, a sprawling network of jungle paths used to transport troops and supplies. Just like Fabius, the Viet Cong avoided direct confrontation with superior American forces, instead stretching their supply lines thin over thousands of miles of hidden routes. Every ambush, every sabotaged bridge was a page from Rome's playbook, proving that time and persistence could wear down even the most advanced military. But the Fabian strategy isn't confined to jungles and ancient battlefields. Today, it's playing out in real time through technology. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, SpaceX's Starlink satellites became a digital lifeline, allowing Ukrainian forces to maintain communication and coordination despite relentless cyberattacks and infrastructure strikes. By decentralizing their networks and staying mobile, they mirrored Fabius's tactics, denying their enemy a clear target while slowly grinding down their advances. What makes this strategy timeless? It recognizes that victory isn't always about landing the knockout punch. Sometimes it's about outlasting your opponent, turning their strength into a weakness. Whether it's a Roman general, a guerrilla fighter, or a satellite network, the lesson remains: the longer you can delay and disrupt, the closer you get to winning without ever fighting the battle your enemy wants. Next, we'll see how this same principle of exhaustion applies to today's economic battlegrounds. Now let's shift our focus from battlefields to boardrooms, where the Fabian strategy's principle of exhaustion takes on a new form: economic warfare. Just as ancient empires strangled their enemies by cutting off vital resources, today's global powers are waging silent wars over something far smaller but equally critical: semiconductors. Take Taiwan's Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, which produces over half the world's advanced chips. Like Rome's salt embargoes against Carthage, modern nations recognize that controlling essential resources can cripple an adversary without firing a shot. When the United States restricted China's access to TSMC cutting-edge chips in 2022, it wasn't just a trade dispute, it was a deliberate campaign of economic attrition, starving China's tech sector of the components needed to compete. The parallels to ancient tactics are striking. Rome knew Carthage depended on salt to preserve food and pay soldiers, so they blockaded its supply. Today, semiconductors are the salt of the digital age. Without them, everything from smartphones to fighter jets grinds to a halt. By dominating chip production, Taiwan and its allies are playing the long game, leveraging scarcity to weaken rivals just as Fabius weakened Hannibal. But here's the twist: unlike ancient sieges, this battle isn't one-sided. China is responding with its own Fabian-style maneuvers, pouring billions into domestic chip production to break the embargo. The lesson, whether it's 2,000 years ago or today, economic warfare follows the same rules: starve your enemy of what they need, and you won't just win the battle, you'll redefine the war. Next, we'll wrap up with a powerful reminder of how these ancient strategies still shape our world in ways you might not expect. As we bring this journey through time to a close, It's remarkable to see how these 20 ancient strategies have woven themselves into the fabric of modern conflict. From the feigned retreats of Mongol horsemen to the digital decoys of cyber warfare, the playbook of war hasn't changed, only the tools have. Whether it's a general on a battlefield or a hacker in a dark room, the principles of deception, attrition, and psychological dominance remain as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. Think about it. The same tactics that toppled empires now shape corporate takeovers, influence social media battles, and even decide the fate of nations in cyberspace. The hollow force strategy that once tricked Roman legions with dummy campfires now misleads satellites with artificial intelligence-generated troop movements. The Trojan Horse has evolved from a wooden statue to a line of malicious code hidden in a USB drive. The thread connecting ancient battles to modern warfare isn't just unbroken, it's stronger than ever. So here's a thought to leave you with: the next world war may be fought with artificial intelligence, drones, and cyber weapons, but it will still be won with the wisdom of Sun Tzu. Because while technology advances, human nature stays the same. Greed, fear, and overconfidence are just as exploitable today as they were in the age of swords and shields. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Which of these ancient tactics surprised you the most when you saw it in modern use? Was it the false flag operations that still fool nations, or the economic sieges that cripple empires without a single bullet fired? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the timeless art of strategy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. History isn't just about the past, it's the key to understanding the battles of tomorrow. See you in the next video.